Oh, really?
Vampire! We take your candy!
Count Dracula.
I am Dracula. And I bid you welcome, Mr. Hunt, to my house. Come in.
Our first award goes to the vampire for most blood drained in a single evening.
The strength of the vampire is that people will not believe in him.
Good evening, YouTube. It is May. I know the previous week was also May, but I forgot, so it is May. Hopefully you're having lovely weather wherever you are. I am so excited to be here recording. I have already uploaded the opening. I've already checked the mic. Juliet is sleeping at my feet. It is nice and quiet, so maybe we can get through this. Let's see. All right. Let's do this. Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I am your host, Lena Nazari, and I have to go ahead and apologize because the previous 3 episodes I recorded very early because I knew I was headed into a busy season, and I forgot to do the tarot last week for May. So now it is the second week of May, but that's okay. But more importantly than that, it is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there. I hope you're having a lovely day, and thank you for everything you do. It's not an easy job, but it's our job, right? So happy Mother's Day to all of you. The 3rd book is out. That is right. The 3rd book is out. So if you are part of my Fanged family, my street team, if you're on my social media, you already know this. Some of you may already have the book at this point in time, but Fatal Curse is out, and most excitingly, that means the trilogy is complete. So now you can read all 3 books and not, have to deal with a cliffhanger and have to wait a week. So for the readers who have been waiting to find out what happens, thank you so much. And for the people who are now going to start reading my books because they're complete and you're somebody who likes to binge read, I thank you also. So you can go to my website, lenanazari.com, see all the latest updates, join my Fanged family, join my street team, and you can also find Fatal Curse. Well, you can find all 3 books on Amazon. Okay, so my tea this evening, normally I like to tie it in with what we're talking about, but I thought I'm just going to pick a tea I really enjoy. So we're going to go back to the Moonlight and Serenade tonight. I mean, she's a lovely young lady, and it is Mother's Day. Perhaps she is a mother, but we're going to do Moonlight and Serenade just because I really like it, and it's not caffeinated, and trust me, I do not need caffeine right now. All right, let's do the tarot. I want to apologize again to the people who are listening to the podcast because every time I shuffle this deck, I know it's very loud in the mic, and I'm sorry, but let's see what Lena needs to focus on for May. Let's see what the cards have to tell us. When I'm recording this, it's actually a full moon, so this is the perfect time to do this. So I'm very excited. I think there's good energy around. There's strong energy around, so let's hope it's for the good. And let's check out what the tarot has to tell me for May. I'm excited. Okay. What does the tarot have to tell me? And if you're watching YouTube, you can see that I'm doing this, but if you are listening to the mic, obviously I'm doing it because you get to hear it. Ace of Pentacles. I feel like I pull a lot of pentacles. I'll have to go back and look, but I feel like I pull a lot. Guys, The Ace of Pentacles, manifestation, prosperity, new opportunities, resources, and abundance. I like it. I like it. So let's hope that this relates to the books and the books being complete and the new book being out. Manifestation, I would love to manifest some of the things I've been putting out there, and obviously would love to see some prosperity, because that would mean I would be able to stop picking up at the hospital, which would be very nice. So we're going to set this aside. We're going to put this over here by my incense. The Ace of Pentacles under a full moon. Baby, I will take it. All right. Okay, so in honor of Mother's Day, I wanted to do something that was family friendly, something that you mamas could sit down and watch with your kids. And I did watch this movie with one of my kids, so I promise you, I guess it depends on what you allow your children to watch, but I feel like this is a very family friendly one. This is Cirque du Freak, the Vampire's Assistant, and it is based on some YA novels, and I was very excited to sit down and watch it. So we're going to do a summary. If you've never listened to this podcast before, massive spoiler alert, I ruin everything. So if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, stop the podcast, go watch it, and then you can come back. But we are going to do a summary in case you're somebody who saw it but can't remember, or you're somebody who doesn't really watch the movies, you just like to listen to me talk about them. All right, Cirque du Freak, the Vampire's Assistant. In an unnamed American town, teenagers Darren and Steve, Darren's more rebellious best friend and classmate, sneak out at night to attend Cirque du Freak show at a local theater. During the performance, Steve recognizes one of the troupe's members, Larton Creepsley, as a vampire who is over 100 years old, prompting him to try to find Creepsley after the show. Meanwhile, Darren, fascinated by Creepsley's spider, Madame Octa, goes backstage and impulsively steals her, but is forced to hide when Creepsley returns to his green room. Steve arrives begging to be made a vampire, but Creepsley refuses after tasting Steve's blood, which he says tastes of evil. When Creepsley realizes that Madame Octa was stolen, Darren flees from the theater with Creepsley in pursuit. He escapes when the mysterious Mr. Tiny arrives in his limousine, accompanied by Merlot. I think that's how it's said, Merlot? Yeah, we're gonna go with that. The latter is unimpressed with Darren, dismissing him as a bag of blood, but Tiny promises to stay in touch after dropping Darren off at his home. The following day, Darren secretly brings Madame Octa to school, where she escapes. After a struggle in the crowded hallway, Madame Octa bites Steve on the cheek, leaving him to succumb to her deadly venom in the hospital. Darren returns to the theater and begs Creepsley for help. Initially, he's annoyed and contemptuous. Creepsley then agrees on the condition that Darren becomes half vampire and Creepsley's personal assistant. Darren agrees, only to flee while Creepsley administers the antidote to Steve. However, after nearly attacking his own sister out of vampiric bloodlust, Darren decides to leave with Creepsley, who uses magic to stage Darren's death of a fall from the roof. After being buried in a cemetery, Creepsley digs up the grave to free Darren, but Merlot ambushes them. Creepsley fights him off, and the two go to the Cirque du Freak campgrounds, where Darren meets Evra Vaughn the Snake Boy and Rebecca the Monkey Girl. Meanwhile, Steve, contemplating suicide after losing his best friend, is stopped by Tiny, who offers him a chance to become Vampanese, a race of vampires who, unlike Creepsley and the others, murders their victims to feed on their blood. Steve agrees, proceeding to kill high school history teacher Mr. Kersey with Merlot's help. Trying to instigate a confrontation between Steve and Darren, Tiny kidnaps Rebecca and Darren's family, leaving a flyer for the Cirque du Freak at Darren's former home. At the theater, Creepsley and Merlot fight while Darren fights with Steve, but Darren's refusal to feed has weakened him. Rebecca frees herself using her monkey tail and offers Darren a taste of her blood. After some hesitation, he accepts. Creepsley stabs Merlot, and with his dying words, Merlot declares that the truce between the two vampire clans has been broken. Tiny, who has been watching from the balcony with opera glasses, eventually separates Steve and Darren. Darren asks Steve to stay with him, but Steve refuses, saying, "I have my destiny and you have yours." Steve then leaves with Tiny, who plans to groom him as a Vampanese leader. Creepsley returns Darren's family to their home, hypnotizing them so they'll forget what they have been through. Rebecca and Darren share a heartfelt kiss before returning to the campgrounds, where Creepsley gives Darren a coffin to sleep in, and Darren accepts his new life as a member of the Cirque du Freak. That is the summary. Let's go ahead and break this down. Trivia and vampiric crossovers. So Salma Hayek is in this, and of course she plays Santanico Pandemonium in From Dusk Till Dawn. Kristen Shaw plays Teeth in this and is the guide in What We Do in the Shadows. I actually looked because I thought her character has to have a name, right? But no, she's just called the guide. Willem Dafoe is in this, and of course he's in The Hunger and Shadow of a Vampire, which we just covered. And we get to play my favorite game. How many actors from this movie were also in Supernatural? And the answer is 1. Don McManus plays Darren's father, and he was, they say Sam Hain in Supernatural. Of course it's Samhain, but in Supernatural he plays the character Sam Hain. So we're going to break this down, okay? It's important to mention there are Vampanese, vampires, and half vampires. Okay? Try to follow along. Relationship to humans. You can choose a human that you make a half vampire, which is very, very similar to a human servant. Okay? So the half vampires have some of the vampire's powers, but they can also be in the sunlight. So think Renfield, from the most recent Renfield. Beyond that, the vampires exist secretly amongst humans. The vampires do not need to kill humans to feed on them. However, the Vampanese do. They're choosing to do that. Relationship to animals. The vampire in this has a pet spider, and it seems like he's able to control the spider, but it's not clear if he trained the spider, or it's some kind of special spider, or he just has power over the spider. It's not clear, but I'm pretty sure the vampire and the spider communicate because he sort of responds to things that she is saying. Appearance. The vampires are very pale. At one point we see one of the vampire's eyes turn bright green. After Steve has turned, he has red eyes. This is the evil boy who becomes Vampanese. They have sharp, strong fingernails that they can use to slice or puncture, and they can extend these fingernails at will. Fangs. Boo. No fangs. They use their fingernails to puncture, and then they drink from that wound. Moving on. Blood. Yes, they do drink blood. In this world, a vampire can taste your blood and know if you are a good person or an evil person. As explained, the Vampanese do kill their victims when they feed, and this is made, it's because they can't control their bloodlust, is the implication in all of this. The vampires sedate their victims, feed on just a little, and then leave. But the biggest thing you have to understand is you have to feed to have your powers. So if you don't drink blood, you are not going to have power. We never see the vampires eat food. The vampires cannot be in the sun, but like I said, half vampires can. Sleep. They sleep in coffins, so we get to see that. They do sleep in coffins. Religious items, this is never addressed. I don't know. Powers. Oh wait, let's do rules first. So there is a vampiric council that is mentioned sort of in the beginning, and there are rules. One is that children can't be made vampires, but I guess we need to define what's children, because Steve and Darren are both in high school and they get turned, so Either they're not considered children, or what people are not caring about the rules. They're supposed to keep their existence a secret from the humans, and they don't need to be invited in, because we do see Creepsley just show up in Darren's bedroom. Powers. So I'm gonna start by saying this. Creepsley has scars on his face. So either he had the scars, and when he was turned human, the vampire blood did not take the scars away, or he was scarred as a vampire, which means he doesn't have like complete healing properties. They are fast, they are strong, and they are agile, which we see almost all the time with vampires. They can scale walls, and most interestingly, they exhale a gas that knocks humans out. That's handy, I guess. Not great if you're like getting excited and making out with a human. You're gonna knock them out, but moving on. How are they made? So we see Darren turned into a half vampire by having his fingertips cut, and then Creepsley has his fingertips cut, and then they touch fingertips in an exchange of blood. And Creepsley says, when the blood hits your heart, it's gonna hurt. So after this, Darren starts the turn, and then over the next day, he starts craving raw meat and wants to drink his little sister's blood, which is a trope we see a lot. The whole, like, it made me think of the Jim Carrey one. What is that, Once Bitten? Where he's like drinking the blood out of the steaks and wearing sunglasses, and his parents think he's high. It reminded me of that. How do they die? Stabbing the heart. And the one that we do see killed, it appears that it's a silver blade. So I don't know if you just have to stab the heart, or if you specifically need to stab the heart with silver, but that's what we see. Heartbeats and breathing. Vampires have heartbeats in this world because Creepsley says that when he was looking at a woman that he used to love when he was human, it still made his heart beat like a jackhammer. They must not need oxygen. We know they exhale, right? Because they exhale gas, noxious gas. But apparently they don't need oxygen because Darren fakes his own death and is buried, and he's like just playing games on his phone waiting to be dug up. So he would have run out of oxygen, because obviously Creepsley can't come dig him up until it's nighttime. So he was down there for hours, so they must not need oxygen. Are they good or are they bad? So there's different races, like we said. The vampires are good. The Vampanese are bad, because the Vampanese are the ones that are choosing to kill and drain humans, even though they don't really need to, because the vampires don't drink very much at all. It's a very small amount. It's like a shot glass full, and they move on. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. Tropes I love. Like I said, I love the whole watching the turn over the next day, and you see the human like going for the raw meat and like staring at jugulars and things like that. I always love that trope. But the one I really love is the fighting between factions or clans of vampires. You know, we see this one a lot. I especially love it when it's vampire versus werewolf, but when it's like vampire clan versus vampire clan or factions, I always love that trope, especially when you get a really good backstory and you get to know like how the tension started and how it's been growing. And the other thing I really love that we get in this one is the destined to happen, fated to happen, like prophecy trope that we get in this one. And the prophecy is that two best friends will be split in the war, and we know that's Darren and Steve because one's Vampanese and one's vampire, and so they are prophesized to go to battle each other at some point. Tropes I hate. I can't really pick one out in this one because it's made for a younger audience, and whenever you make something for a younger audience, you specifically are using tropes because kids understand like the classic vampire trope, the classic vampire rules, and they play into that. So there's a purpose behind all of the tropes in here, so I let all of them slide. Now, that being said, we all know I hate when vampires don't have fangs, but they might have done that for a reason. because it is made for a younger audience, they sort of just like take their thumbnail and puncture, and we've seen that in other things, but we're gonna let that one go because this is a family movie. All right, let's get to the ratings. Boy, we're just chugging along on this one. I love it. Let's get to the ratings. How scary or evil are the vampires of Cirque du Freak? Well, so the Vampanese are very bad news in this one. We're going to go ahead and give them an 8 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. They kidnap families and hang them up by ropes, including a little girl. They're all bad, okay? The vampires are better. They don't kill in order to feed. They don't take a lot. They can knock these humans out so the humans don't even really know what's happening. They can use like hypnotism if they needed to. They're trying to maintain the peace. They're trying to just like keep everything copacetic. Both races are bound by the sun. So we have to remember that. And they do have powers and strength and speed. So, if they wanted to, they could be a big problem for humans. So all in all, we're going to give the vampires 4 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. How sexy or alluring are the vampires of Cirque du Freak? So the Vampanese only get their 1 honorary point. 1 out of 10 onks. They are pure bloodlust. That is all they care about. Don't expect to have like a romance. The vampires do have an ability to love. We see both the half vampire and the vampire in relationships, so we know that they love. That being said, this is a family movie. The vampires are not super sexual. They're not sensual. They aren't pulling women towards them just by walking into the room. The girls don't respond differently to Darren once he's turned. There's nothing like that. So normally I'd ask myself, are they more sexy or are they more scary? But because of the context of the movie, it's really hard to answer this question. So we're gonna do a tie. We're gonna give them 4 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure, as well as scariness and evil. So we have a tie. My thoughts. This is PG-13. It is listed as a fantasy, and it feels very much like a fantasy. This is one that you can watch with the family. Again, that's based on what you allow your children to watch. No judgment, but I thought this one was very fun. As soon as it ended, I felt like there had to have been sequels planned, so I looked into it, and yes, there was supposed to be 3 more movies after this one. It was supposed to be a franchise. However, the first one did not do very well, so the sequels were scrapped. Even this one movie seemed like stuff had been edited out, things that you were maybe supposed to know. Like, I think this is one of those movies that was specifically made for the fans of the books, so they just assumed that you were going to know everything and that they didn't need to explain very much. So when it ended, I looked into all of this, and I almost want to read the books just to see what was left out. Like, what am I missing out on? What's the information I should have known? This movie is fun. It's light. It was a very much needed break for me from some of the movies that I've been watching recently. It almost feels like a comic book come to life. It was very fun. I absolutely would have watched the sequels. And like I said, I watched this with one of my daughters and she really enjoyed it. So I was not kidding when I said, this is the kind of movie you can grab some blankets, make some popcorn, and sit down and watch on a family movie night. I could definitely see myself watching this one again with my nephew when he's ready, or like having on in the background of a family Halloween party. I could see myself turning this one on again. Next week, we are going to be doing one of the DVDs that I stumbled across at the used DVD store when I was on the hunt for Shadow. I was very, very excited to see it. I remember renting it at Blockbuster and watching it, and I'm pretty sure when I rented it, it was on video. It was the late 90s. But it might have been DVD. It doesn't matter. I got it at Blockbuster, brought it home and watched it, and I have very fond memories of it. So I'm very excited that I found it and that I get to rewatch it. It is based on a Stephen King short story, and it is called The Night Flyer. Now, as of this date, it is not available to stream anywhere. So you have a week to try and track it down and watch it if you would like to watch it before I review it. But I will be doing Stephen King's The Night Flyer, and I'm pretty sure it was, I want to say 97. So you can IMDb it, and of course it will list all the options for watching it. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Happy Mother's Day again. Go get my books. I would love to hear from everybody. I would love for you to tell me what you think. It's been so hard to keep the secret. This book was done almost a year ago, so to keep that secret for a year has been tough. So I'm excited to start hearing from people what they think. I'm so excited to have them out. My next appearance will be the first weekend of June in Philadelphia at Fan Expo, so I hope to see some of you out there. In the meantime, I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening. Wow, this was a quick one. We zoomed right through it. I don't know. I swear this tea is not caffeinated, so I don't know why. I don't know. I feel very focused today. I will tell you, I've been working out a lot, working out a lot, eating well, so I don't know, maybe that helps with the hyper focus. Maybe it's just because I'm so excited when I get to do these. I love doing these. Thank you everybody for coming and continuing to watch. Please make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you know when new ones come. I am going to get to editing so that I can get this out in time. I'm actually headed into a week where I'm working a lot. Not just my full-time job, but also picking up at the hospital. So I'm going to try and get this edited so you guys can have it on time. So if you're watching it on time on Mother's Day, I pulled it off. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next time.